I never thought I'd be the kind of person to drag a neighbor into court over a hobby. But when I stepped onto my back deck at 9:12 p.m., clutching my star chart and a mug of chamomile tea, I found myself staring at what looked like an astronomical crime scene. My prized 10-inch Dobsonian telescope, my gateway to the cosmos, lay in pieces on the grass. Its mirror shattered like a fallen star, scratched into the tripod's base, and jagged silver marker were the words, "No nerd towers in my subdivision." Across the cul-de-sac, my neighbor Leonard Baxter stood on his lawn, holding a crowbar and wearing a flannel shirt buttoned to the chin. He raised the crowbar like a scepter when he saw me, grinning. "I fixed your little science experiment," he shouted, his voice dripping with smug satisfaction. What Leonard didn't know was that my backyard security camera, tucked discreetly in a birdhouse, had recorded his entire rampage in crisp night vision HD. That he really didn't know that this act of petty sabotage would land him in front of a judge. With the whole neighborhood watching, let me back up and explain how we got here. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 34, and I moved into Starling Heights 8 months ago. Drawn by its dark skies and open yards perfect for stargazing, I'm an amateur astronomer, the kind of person who gets giddy over a clear view of Saturn's rings. I keep to myself, spend my evenings mapping constellations, and even run a small blog about backyard astronomy. Starling Heights seemed like paradise. With its low light pollution and quiet streets, what I hadn't counted on was the neighborhood's self-appointed guardian of normalcy, Leonard Baxter, a retired insurance adjuster who treated anything unconventional like a personal insult. This guy once reported a kid's drone for disturbing the peace because it buzzed 10 feet over his fence. He collected vintage lawnmowers, polishing them like trophies, and viewed my telescope as an affront to his vision of suburban uniformity. The trouble started weeks after I set up my telescope. I built a small observation deck in my backyard, nothing fancy, just a wooden platform with a weatherproof cover for my scope. I checked the city codes, filed a permit, and even sent a courtesy email to the Starling Heights Homeowners Association HOA, which had a 62-page rulebook and a reputation for nitpicking. I thought I was in the clear. Then a letter arrived on official HOA letterhead. "Dear Ms. Carter, your observation structure violates Code 8.1, subsection D. All backyard installations must align with approved aesthetic standards. Remove the platform within 14 days or face $60 daily fines." The letter was signed by Leonard, the HOA as vice president. I responded politely, attaching my permit and signing a bylaw allowing scientific equipment with 30 days notice, which I provided. I assumed that would end it. I was so wrong. Leonard's campaign against my telescope kicked into high gear. He started leaving astronomy-themed gifts in my mailbox, a plastic glow-in-the-dark star, labeled approved decor, a pamphlet for a normal hobby like birdwatching, and once, a sticky note that just said, "Stick to Netflix." He sent 19 emails to the HOA board in 1 week, copying me on every one. With subject lines like "Telescope terror threatens our serenity," he went door to door, warning neighbors that my setup was turning our community into a NASA wannabe zone. One neighbor, Karen, told me Leonard claimed my telescope was emitting radiation beams that could ruin property values. I tried to stay calm. I invited Leonard over to look through the scope, hoping a glimpse of Jupiter's moons might soften him. He declined, saying, "I don't need to stare at space to know it's a waste of time." Things escalated at the next HOA meeting. Leonard presented a 50-minute slideshow titled "The Dangers of Backyard Observatories," complete with blurry photos of my deck and wild claims about light pollution. Ironic, since my scope needs dark skies. I stood up, explained that my setup was fully compliant, and even educational. I had offered free stargazing nights for kids in the neighborhood. Leonard's response, a theatrical scoff, and "Stargazing? What's next? Alien landing pads?" The room laughed, but I could tell some neighbors were swayed by his charisma. Over the next month, Leonard's tactics got pettier. He'd shine his high-powered porch light directly at my deck during my observation sessions, ruining my view. He organized a neighborhood beautification patrol that seemed to exist solely to loiter near my fence and mutter about my weird hobby. One member, a guy named Carl, suggested I was trying to contact extraterrestrials with my scope. Then came the night that changed everything. At 1:43 a.m., my phone pinged with a motion alert from my birdhouse camera. Half asleep, I pulled up the feed and nearly dropped my phone. There was Leonard, dressed in dark overalls, sneaking into my backyard with a crowbar and a marker. The night vision footage was crystal clear. He pried the telescope off its mount, smashed the mirror with a deliberate swing, and scratched his message into the tripod. As he worked, the camera's audio caught him muttering, "Think you're too smart for a normal yard. Let's see how you like broken glass." He even did a little victory dance before slipping back to his house. The whole act took 15 minutes, and he ended it by shouting, "Take that, space nerd." I was livid but stayed calm. I called 911, explaining that my neighbor had just destroyed my $4,000 to $100 telescope. The dispatcher sounded skeptical until I mentioned the footage. 2 officers arrived within 20 minutes. I met them on my deck, laptop in hand. I played the video. One officer, a young woman named Officer Ruiz, watched it twice, shaking her head. "This guy really has it out for your telescope," she said, stifling a laugh. They crossed the cul-de-sac to Leonard's house, where he answered the door in pajamas. Feigning shock, I could see him through his window, gesturing wildly and pointing at my yard. Then, in a move that sealed his fate, Leonard marched to the patrol car and declared, "I want to file a complaint. She broke her own telescope to frame me." The officers exchanged glances, filing a false police report on top of vandalism. Not a smart play. They arrested him on the spot for vandalism, trespassing, and making a false report. As they cuffed him, Leonard yelled about protecting neighborhood aesthetics and how my telescope was an eyesore, worse than a junkyard. The next morning, I called a telescope repair specialist. The damage was catastrophic. The mirror alone would cost $3,800 to replace, and the tripod needed a full rebuild. Total estimate, $5,600. Pushing the crime into felony territory. My insurance agent was stunned when I sent her the footage. He narrated his own crime, she said, almost impressed. The story spread through Starling Heights like a meteor shower. By noon, neighbors were stopping by to see the wreckage. One, a retired teacher named Susan, admitted she'd always wanted to try stargazing, but was scared of Leonard's judgment. "Maybe now I'll get a scope," she said, eyeing the broken pieces. The HOA board called an emergency meeting, the first in 3 years. Leonard wasn't there to dominate it. The president, a soft-spoken accountant named Priya, took charge. The meeting was packed. Neighbors I'd never seen showed up, eager to discuss recent events. Stories poured out. Leonard had fined someone for a too colorful mailbox, measured a neighbor's grass to ensure it was under the 0.5 inches, and once sent a violation notice for a suspiciously bright porch light. The board voted to suspend Leonard pending his legal outcome and, in a surprising twist, approved a community stargazing night on my deck. Someone leaked the footage to a local news station, and by evening, the story aired with the headline, "Suburban Stargazer Sabotaged, HOA VP's Crowbar Meltdown." The reporter struggled to keep a straight face while describing Leonard's anti-telescope rampage. The video went viral on X with hashtags like #TelescopeTakedown and #CrowbarKaren. Yes, they called him that. A TikTok remix of Leonard's victory dance got 1.5 million views in 48 hours. Over the next few weeks, the neighborhood transformed. Susan bought a small telescope and joined my stargazing nights. A family down the street installed a bird bath. That doubled as a sundial, definitely not HOA approved. One bold neighbor painted their fence a vibrant teal with a sign reading, "For Emily's Stars." My blog traffic spiked, and I started getting emails from amateur astronomers across the country, sharing their own HOA horror stories. Leonard's court date came 6 weeks later. He showed up in an ill-fitting suit, his lawyer arguing he was under stress from community aesthetic pressures. The prosecutor had the footage, the $5,600 damage estimate, and receipts showing Leonard bought the silver marker days before. The judge, a no-nonsense man named Judge Patel, watched the video with a raised eyebrow. At the space nerd line, a juror snorted. The judge wasn't amused by Leonard's defense. "Mr. Baxter," he said, "you destroyed private property over a telescope and lied to the police. This wasn't stress, this was a calculated attack on someone's passion." He sentenced Leonard to 75 days in county jail, 2 years, probation, full restitution, and 120 hours of community service cleaning park trails. As Leonard was led away, still ranting about suburban standards, I held up a small star chart. "You missed a constellation," I said calmly. His face turned red as he was escorted out. The aftermath was surreal. My telescope was repaired. Thanks to Leonard's restitution, and Starling Heights became a haven for quirky hobbies. A kid down the street started a drone club. Another neighbor built a butterfly garden that broke every HOA color rule. I hosted weekly stargazing nights, and even Officer Ruiz showed up once. Peering at Mars through my scope, Leonard moved away after his release, reportedly to a condo. With no HOA, my blog turned into a podcast, and I'm now working on a book about backyard astronomy and battling petty tyrants. Sometimes, at night, I aim my telescope at Andromeda and smile, knowing one neighbor's grudge made my corner of the universe a little brighter.